I should have stayed at the office. That thought followed Elliot Hayes up the driveway as the porch light glowed against the quiet suburban street. He wasn't supposed to be home until midnight. Ryan Whitmore believed he was working late, buried in revisions for a client who never answered emails on time. Instead, Elliot had left early with a migraine and an uneasiness he couldn't explain. The house was unusually alive for 10 o'clock. Laughter drifted through the open kitchen window, low, familiar, intimate. Ryan's laugh. Elliot paused before unlocking the door, telling himself not to jump to conclusions. Ryan spent time here often. Margaret Hayes adored him, and Caleb Mercer had recently started inviting him over for drinks or late basketball games on TV. There was nothing suspicious about that. Friends bonded. Families blended. Still, something about the tone of that laughter made Elliot's chest tighten. He stepped inside quietly, placing his keys on the hallway table. The kitchen lights spilled into the darkened living room. He could see them from the doorway, Ryan leaning against the counter, sleeves rolled up, wineglass in hand. Caleb stood closer than necessary, his broad frame angled inward as if shielding a secret conversation. They were smiling at each other, not the polite smiles people wear when someone else is present. This was softer. Private. Elliot cleared his throat, both men startled. Caleb straightened immediately, taking a deliberate step back. Ryan's smile flickered before he replaced it with something casual. "Hey," Ryan said. "You're home early." "Yeah," Elliot replied, studying them. "Project wrapped up faster than I expected." Caleb lifted his glass. "We were just talking about that concert downtown next month. Ryan thinks you'd like it." The explanation sounded rehearsed, though Elliot couldn't prove it. He nodded slowly and crossed the kitchen, noticing 2 glasses already half empty and a third bottle uncorked. Caleb rarely drank on weeknights. Ryan rarely stayed this late without texting Elliot first. Margaret had gone to bed hours ago. The house felt like it belonged to someone else. Elliot forced a smile. "Looks fun." Ryan reached for his hand briefly, a gesture that should have grounded him. Instead, Elliot felt the faintest hesitation before Ryan's fingers curled around his own. It was subtle, barely perceptible, but Elliot felt everything lately. Every pause. Every glance. That he told himself he was being paranoid. 6 months earlier, when Elliot had moved back home after losing his apartment, Ryan had insisted it was temporary. They would save money, plan a future, maybe move to another city together. Ryan had sounded certain then, full of promises that made Elliot believe stability was within reach. Caleb had welcomed him politely but distantly. Elliot and Caleb had never been close. Their parents' marriage had come late in their lives, long after childhood bonds could form naturally. They coexisted respectfully, shared kitchen space, exchanged brief conversations about work, avoided deeper topics. Then Ryan entered the dynamic. At first, Elliot had been grateful. Ryan and Caleb connected over sports, business podcasts, and mutual sarcasm. It made dinners less awkward. It made the house feel lighter, but somewhere along the way, their friendship developed its own rhythm, inside jokes Elliot didn't fully understand, conversations that continued in low tones when he stepped out of the room, quick glances that ended when he looked back that he had brushed it aside. Insecurity could destroy a relationship faster than betrayal. Caleb set his glass down. "I should get some sleep." "Early meeting." Ryan nodded. "Yeah, me too." The air shifted again, an undercurrent Elliot couldn't name. As Caleb walked past him toward the hallway, their shoulders nearly brushed. Caleb avoided eye contact. That, more than anything, unsettled Elliot. Caleb was many things, reserved, analytical, but never evasive. "Night," Caleb muttered. "Night," Elliot replied. Ryan lingered in the kitchen, staring into his wineglass as if searching for something at the bottom. Elliot studied him openly. "Now, everything okay?" Elliot asked. Ryan looked up too quickly. "Of course. Why wouldn't it be? You just seem distracted." Ryan stepped closer and kissed his forehead. "Long week. Don't read into it." Don't read into it. Elliot had been hearing variations of that phrase for weeks that he followed Ryan upstairs, noticing the faint scent of Caleb's cologne clinging to Ryan's shirt. It was ridiculous to focus on something so trivial. They lived in the same house. Of course scents mixed. Of course proximity happened. Still, when Ryan disappeared into the bathroom, Elliot sat on the edge of the bed and let memory replay in fragments. The way Caleb's hand had rested briefly on Ryan's forearm while making a point, the split-second delay before they separated when Elliot walked in, the way Ryan's laughter had sounded freer downstairs than it had with Elliot in days. Ryan emerged, towel around his neck. "You're quiet." "Just tired," Elliot said. Ryan climbed into bed and scrolled through his phone, angling the screen slightly away. Another subtle shift. Another detail Elliot wished he hadn't noticed. After the lights went off, Ryan fell asleep quickly. His breathing deepened into a steady rhythm. Elliot stared at the ceiling, counting seconds between doubts that he didn't want to be the suspicious boyfriend. He didn't want to become someone who searched for problems. Trust required discipline, but trust also required honesty. A faint buzz broke the silence. Ryan's phone vibrated against the nightstand. Elliot froze. It buzzed again, brief, insistent that he waited, expecting Ryan to stir. Ryan didn't move. Another buzz. The screen lit up faintly in the darkness, illuminating the edge of the room. Elliot told himself to ignore it. Messages arrived at all hours. Work emails. Group chats. The buzzing stopped. Silence returned. Minutes passed, heavy and oppressive. Finally, slowly, Elliot reached for the phone. His pulse thundered in his ears as he lifted it carefully, shielding the light from Ryan's face. He didn't intend to invade privacy. He only needed reassurance, something harmless to laugh at tomorrow when he confessed his irrational fear. The notification preview glowed at the top of the screen. Caleb. Elliot's throat tightened. He stared at the single line of text visible without unlocking the phone. Last night shouldn't have happened. The room seemed to tilt. Elliot read it again, hoping exhaustion distorted the words. But they remained unchanged, stark and undeniable. Last night, Ryan had told him he'd gone straight home after drinks with coworkers. Caleb had been out with friends. Elliot's fingers trembled as he held the phone, the weight of it suddenly unbearable. 1,000 explanations rushed through his mind, each less convincing than the last. Maybe it was about something innocent. A stupid argument. A misunderstanding. But Caleb's tone downstairs, Ryan's hesitation, the private laughter, they aligned now with frightening clarity. Ryan shifted slightly in his sleep, and Elliot quickly placed the phone back on the nightstand. Screen dark once more. He lay back, staring into the blackness, heart pounding against his ribs. For the first time since moving back into this house, Elliot felt like a stranger inside it. And as the silence stretched on, one thought settled heavily in his chest: whatever had happened last night, it wasn't over. Elliot Hayes did not sleep. He lay beside Ryan Whitmore until dawn, replaying the message in his mind as if repetition might soften its meaning. Last night shouldn't have happened. The words felt deliberate, weighted with regret rather than confusion. Regret implied intention. Regret implied choice. When Ryan's alarm sounded, Elliot was already sitting up. Ryan blinked groggily. "You're awake early." "Couldn't sleep," Elliot replied evenly. Ryan studied him for a moment, as though gauging whether something had shifted. If he sensed it, he didn't show it. He rolled out of bed and headed to the shower, leaving his phone unattended again on the nightstand. The temptation clawed at Elliot. He didn't want to be the man who searched through messages in secret, but the truth was already circling him. Avoiding it would not make him noble, it would make him blind. He picked up the phone and unlocked it with the passcode Ryan had once shared casually, back when transparency had been effortless. The thread with Caleb Mercer was near the top. Elliot opened it. The most recent message was the one he had seen. Above it, Ryan's reply from minutes earlier, sent while Elliot pretended to sleep: "I know. We can't do that again." Elliot's breath caught. Scrolling upward felt like descending a staircase he hadn't known existed. The messages stretched back weeks, evolving from light banter to late-night confessions. There were no explicit details, no graphic descriptions, but the emotional intimacy was unmistakable. "You understand me better than he does. I didn't expect to feel this. We have to be careful." Elliot's vision blurred. This wasn't a reckless mistake fueled by a single night. It was something cultivated quietly in the spaces Elliot had trusted them to share safely. He locked the phone and set it back exactly where it had been, aligning it with the edge of the table. His hands were steady now, which frightened him more than the shaking had. Ryan emerged from the bathroom, towel slung over his shoulder. "You okay?" Elliot looked at him, really looked at him. The familiar curve of his mouth, the faint scar near his chin, the man he had built future plans around. For a brief second, Elliot wished he had never checked the phone. Ignorance might have preserved this illusion for a little longer. "We need to talk," Elliot said. Ryan paused. "That sounds serious." "It is." Ryan closed the bedroom door behind him. "What's going on?" Elliot didn't raise his voice. He didn't accuse wildly. He simply held Ryan's gaze and said, "I saw the message from Caleb." The silence that followed was immediate and revealing. Ryan's posture stiffened. "You went through my phone." "I saw the notification. Then I looked." "Don't turn this around." Ryan exhaled slowly, running a hand through his hair. "It's not what you think." "That line is exhausted," Elliot replied quietly. "Try something else." Ryan looked toward the window as if searching for an exit that wasn't there. "It was a mistake." "A mistake requires a moment," Elliot said. "This has been weeks." Ryan's jaw tightened. "You read everything?" "Enough." The admission seemed to strip Ryan of his rehearsed defenses. He sat on the edge of the bed, shoulders slumping. "It wasn't planned," Ryan said. "We were talking a lot. He gets me in ways that are different." "Different?" Elliot repeated. Ryan hesitated. "You've been distant. Ever since you moved back here, you've been stressed, distracted. Caleb and I just talked. So you replaced me emotionally before you replaced me physically." Ryan flinched at the word physically, though Elliot had offered no details. The reaction confirmed more than any confession could. "It wasn't supposed to go that far," Ryan said, "but it did." Another silence. Heavy. Conclusive. A knock sounded lightly against the open bedroom door. Caleb stood there, already dressed for work, expression unreadable but tense. "Everything okay?" Caleb asked, though his eyes flicked immediately to Ryan. Elliot stood. "Come in. This concerns you too." Caleb stepped inside slowly. The air in the room thickened, compressed by unspoken acknowledgement. "I saw your message," Elliot said. Caleb didn't pretend confusion. His gaze dropped briefly to the floor before returning to Elliot's face. "I figured you might." Ryan shot him a sharp look. "That's not helping." Caleb ignored him. "You deserve honesty." Elliot almost laughed at that. "Honesty would have been helpful weeks ago." Caleb's voice remained steady. "We didn't plan for this. It started as conversations. You were busy." Ryan felt unheard. Elliot's chest tightened, but he refused to let the comment wound him visibly. "So you stepped in." "I didn't mean to," Caleb said. "But feelings don't ask permission." "They do require boundaries," Elliot replied. Ryan stood abruptly. "We said it wouldn't happen again." Elliot turned to him. "You said that this morning." Ryan had no response. Caleb inhaled slowly. "Last night shouldn't have happened." "There it is again," Elliot said. "That phrase. As if repeating it makes it smaller." Caleb's composure faltered for the first time. It wasn't just physical. The confession landed harder than Elliot expected. Ryan closed his eyes briefly, as though the truth had been dragged into light against his will. "So what are you saying?" Elliot asked Caleb. "That you're in love with him?" Caleb didn't answer immediately, which was answer enough. Ryan looked torn between panic and relief. Elliot recognized that expression. It was the face of someone who no longer had to hide. The realization steadied him. "I won't compete for my own boyfriend," Elliot said quietly. "Not in my own house." Ryan stepped forward. "Elliot, don't make this dramatic." "Dramatic?" Elliot echoed. You built a relationship behind my back and called it confusion. Caleb spoke softly. We never meant to hurt you. That doesn't erase the outcome. The hallway floor creaked faintly, a reminder that Margaret Hayes was somewhere nearby. Elliot refused to let this explode into a spectacle. He would not allow his mother to mediate a betrayal she hadn't caused. Ryan, Elliot said, voice calm and decisive, you need to leave. Ryan stared at him. You're ending this? I'm choosing myself. Caleb stepped back, as if recognizing that this moment did not belong to him. Ryan hesitated, searching Elliot's face for softness that no longer existed. Finding none, he nodded stiffly. Fine. He packed quickly, movements sharp and defensive. Elliot watched without interfering, noting how easily a shared life condensed into a single suitcase. At the doorway, Ryan paused. I did love you. Elliot met his eyes. Then you should have protected that. Ryan left, the house fell into a silence so complete it felt foreign. Caleb remained standing near the bedroom entrance, uncertain. I never wanted it to unfold like this. Elliot looked at him, this man who had shared his kitchen, his space, his tentative sense of stability. It unfolded exactly as you allowed it to, Elliot said. Caleb opened his mouth to respond, then closed it. For once, he had no argument. Elliot walked past him into the hallway, down the stairs, and into the quiet kitchen where the previous night's wineglasses still sat in the sink. He rinsed them methodically, watching the water carry away faint traces of red. The house felt altered, stripped of illusion. Upstairs, a door closed softly. Caleb retreating, Elliot dried his hands and stood alone in the center of the kitchen, absorbing the stillness. The betrayal hurt, but beneath it something steadier was forming. Clarity, trust, he realized, was not something you begged to keep. It was something others either honored or forfeited, and as the morning light filtered through the window, Elliot understood that the story unfolding inside this house was no longer about what Ryan and Caleb had done. It was about who he would become after it.